All right. All right, we are back. Just give a minute now for people to get in. And I think we're good. I'm waiting for it to pop up. Make sure we're rolling. Has it popped up on
Yeah.
your side yet?
Yep. Now it is.
Okay. All right. Cool. Cool.
Yeah, we're good.
All right. Good. All right. All right. We got 16 people that traveled over here. So thank you guys. Sorry for the huge delay. Let's just give another minute though for some people to get in here. Because I know it's going to be sending out notifications here and within the next 10 minutes or so.
Oh, it was at the as I was saying at the chat on the other chat at the end of like July, YouTube decided or Google decided they no longer wanted to stream directly from Google Hangouts. Why? Because they just decided that. So now there's all those crazy technical issues. They've changed everything around because they're making it easier and more helpful.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So everybody, can you guys hear Michael? It looks like people can. I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it looks like it sounds good. They say
Okay.
it's fine now.
Cool. So yeah,
So
just took an
yeah, we
hour.
got
No
that.
kidding. Yeah. Yep. Sorry about that, guys. What a pain. But at least we learn, right? So we're not gonna have to go through this next time. So it's all good in the hood. So we got people slowly trickling in now. About 48 people. So we'll just give just another quick minute, and then we're gonna get going. Don't want to make you guys wait much longer. So just another quick minute. All right, so Michael, welcome to What Do You Mean, man? Thanks for your patience, man. Thanks for working with me to get this going. Appreciate it, brother.
No worries. I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, man. So, real quick, why don't you tell people a little bit about who you are, what you do, and that sort of thing?
So basically, I like you. I run a YouTube channel. Um, I do more. My goal is to build the apologetic video library. That's an apologetic question or apologetic video for every question out there someone might have. So a lot less responses, more like technical videos going through different issues, explaining certain things. That's basically what I focus on.
Good, man. Yeah, and you've had your channel now for what, like 5 years or something? Is that right?
No longer. I
Longer?
started at the end of 2011. So
That's
let's see, it's
insane.
2019. It's like 7 years now, something like that.
That's insane. That's insane. How do you feel about YouTube overall? Do you still like doing it?
Yeah, I like doing it. The more I do it, the more I get comfortable with it. Like when I first started, I was really nervous. I didn't want to know. I didn't want anyone to know who I was. I was trying to hide, and then that all had to change
Yeah.
because people found out who I was.
Yeah, I was wondering about because when I first came across your channel like a couple years ago, I was so curious who you were. You know what I mean? And then like you always hid your face. It was just like you kind of did like a lot of the atheists kind of do that too. You just talk and
Well, I did get some death threats over the year. Nothing recently, so I think luckily that's died down. But I mean, I have a gun, so I'm not too worried about that. I
right,
guess you
yeah,
could say. But it was nervous up front. But I think the more I kind of did it, the more I broke into it, the more I was like, you know what, I got to go public because they found my Facebook page and they're starting to post it on atheist forums now. What else am I gonna do?
oh yeah. I was happy when you finally did go because I was for the longest time I was just like, who is this guy? And I was always looking everywhere trying to figure it out. Yeah. So, anyways, it
Yeah.
was yeah, it's dope. So, hey, man. So, now you've been doing YouTube for a long time. Do you watch a lot of YouTube videos as well, or no?
It's interesting. I used to watch an extensive amount, and I still kind of do listen to some lectures in the background. So I'll watch. So what I try to do is I try to put videos on in the background. So I'll put some of your videos. I'll put some of Cameron's from Capturing Christianity on. Sometimes I'll put Mike Winger on.
Oh,
Sometimes I'll listen to just some atheist channels. So like all this week I was listening to Think Club because I was just on there as well. So I'll put it on in the background as I'm working. But I've tended to drift more towards reading within the past 3 to 4 years. So a lot more reading, a lot less lectures, I'd say.
oh, nice, man. Yeah. I actually don't read at all. No, I'm just kidding. I don't read as much lately as I used to, though. I used to have a lot of time to read, but now I just don't. So, but yeah, man. So, I guess a kind of question I always wondered, and I get asked this sometime, is who would you say is like your favorite atheist YouTuber? Just kind of curious.
Well, that's a good question. I think recently it changed because I did, as I said, I was just discovered Think Club, and I think that guy's great.
Hmm.
His handle friended forever. I think what he does is really good because he's not an anti-theist, and he recognizes a lot of the problems of the anti-theist who say that atheist or say that theism or Christianity or religion is a problem. He recognizes that no, it isn't. It's actually quite beneficial. So Probably he's now become my favorite YouTube atheist out there.
That's interesting because I didn't know he was an atheist. Because I've seen him on my videos and on other people's videos. And last time I saw him on my video, he said something about being an atheist or something, and I was like, oh, I didn't know he was an atheist. So. But yeah, he does seem reasonable from what I've seen in a lot of his comments and stuff like that. So yeah, that's interesting. Do you have another favorite atheist YouTuber, or is it just
I
kind of?
mean, I don't. Does Steve McRae consider himself an atheist? Because I like Steve
Yeah,
McRae. I
yeah,
like Shannon Q. I mean, I don't agree with everything they say, but I
right,
like them. They're nice people.
yeah, for sure. And Steve McRae, he knows philosophy too, so that's helpful too because he understands it a little better than some other guys and stuff. So
Yeah, and when I debated Tom Jump, like Steve came out like on Twitter swinging, just saying that I won the debate.
yeah,
And, like really, he took a lot of heat for that. I
yeah,
felt bad for it, but I mean, like
yeah.
he was like, the evidence clearly shows Mike won the debate, even if Steve didn't agree with me on
Yeah,
that.
and that's what's dope too is because like I've noticed too like more recently I get more and more like really reasonable atheists too, and that's awesome because like it's easy to kind of caricature all of them as a certain way, But lately I've been getting a lot more reasonable ones on my page and stuff like that too, and it's nice to see that. It's nice to see people who are going to be a lot more like open-minded towards and kind of give you points, you know what I mean? And so I mean it's really nice to see that, man. And Steve McRae in that response that he did with him and the other guys actually in the non sequitur back then when it was still a thing, when they did the review on your debate with T Jump, they were taking him to town, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
yeah,
for sure were. It
yeah,
was a 5 hour hangout they did with him, and it was whew,
yeah,
they. But I mean, it just goes to show you that they at least recognized the bad performance from him versus my performance, even
yeah,
though we didn't agree on the conclusion there. So, and I want to try to do that too. So if I see like a theist who does a bad argument, I want to try to do the same thing and be like, hey, I don't, you know. So I think it's something a good lesson to learn.
yeah. No, absolutely, man. And that's yeah, I completely agree. And that's the hard thing. The thing that I kind of hate about online is that you really have like these kind of tribes almost. You know what I mean? Where it's really hard. Like everybody wants to demonize the other side, and I really hate that though too because it should be more of like people should feel free to concede points and change their minds and that sort of thing. But the way it's kind of set up it makes it harder and harder to do that.
Yeah, well, it's just very typical of human nature to gravitate toward
Yeah.
tribalism. I mean, atheists do it, Christians do it,
Yep.
Muslims do it, everyone does it, and it's something we have to fight against. If someone says they don't do that they're unbiased, that they just follow the evidence, I mean, you've not studied human psychology and you're lying to yourself. Don't sit there and tell me that. I'm more likely to think you're biased if you cannot admit you're biased.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 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 absolutely. I think the same thing. Cool, man. So, and by the way, you guys can throw in your chats or your questions too, if you guys have questions and stuff like that too, and we'll come around to them. So, all right. So now, what do you think are some of the like most common fallacies that you kind of see online? You would say from like Christians and atheists or just people in general. What are some of the most common logical fallacies that you see?
I mean, the biggest one I see is circular reasoning. And I did a whole video on this when I addressed the God of the gaps argument. Because that's when people just claim God of the gaps, it's circular reasoning. You're assuming the conclusion you want, namely a naturalistic or materialistic view. So any evidence for God must be a gap in our knowledge because evidence can't lead to theism. So we're just going to assume naturalism and call these all gaps. It's all circular reasoning. That's one of the biggest fallacies I see. Anytime someone is using God of the gaps, 9 times out of 10, they're not using it properly, and they're revealing their own circular reasoning. That I'm already going to assume naturalism. So there's no evidence for theism. So any evidence people use for theism is just gaps in our knowledge that one day naturalism will explain. Why? Because we already know naturalism is true. It's just going in a circle.
Yeah, yeah, and so people are clear too. Can you basically state how the argument goes, and just be a little bit more explicit about why it goes in a circle?
Sure. You give someone evidence for God's existence, emergent space-time, consciousness, the moral argument, and what they'll say is like, well, take consciousness. This is one of my favorite things to go over. They'll say, well, just because we can't explain consciousness now, that doesn't mean it's evidence of God. You're just filling in our unknown knowledge of consciousness with God. And I say, no, I'm not. And first of all, and I'll explain why, but basically what they're saying when they're doing that is they're saying, well, consciousness has to be explained in naturalistic terms. Why? Because I've already assumed naturalism is true. So if you offer an alternative explanation that's not naturalistic for consciousness, that's got to be wrong because I've already assumed naturalism is true. Therefore, it's a gap in our knowledge. And that's what a gap argument, and that's what they do when they argue from a God of the gaps. They're just assuming the conclusion that it's got to be a naturalistic explanation, regardless of where the evidence is actually pointing.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's the thing that kind of sucks, I think, online, is that people hear these like slogans a lot and then they just assume that they can just throw it out all the time. You know, these even fallacies, right? Like, I can't tell you the amount of times where people are like, oh, you committed all these fallacies, and they don't understand properly what a fallacy is, you know? And
Yeah.
that's what kind of sucks. Like the God, like when people say to me like, all arguments for God are God of the gaps. Like it just shows me that they don't have an idea what God of the gaps is, you know. But you get that from people sometimes, you know, when it comes to online. What do you think is the? I don't know if you need time to think about this, but what do you think is some of the most common fallacies that people accuse Christians of incorrectly, or they just don't understand the fallacy?
Argument from ignorance comes up a lot. They'll say, you know, you're arguing from ignorance. And an argument from ignorance would be is if I said, well, God exists because you can't prove him false. You can't prove that he doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Never once did I say that. Never once do I expect atheists to do that. What I do is I say, look, I'm going to present evidence, and I'm going to say this evidence implies a personal source. And this personal source is just what we call God. Now, that's my explanation. That's what I say is the best inference of the data. If you think my inference is wrong, you can either offer a better explanation of the data. You can say, well, I'm just going to be agnostic, or you don't have to answer me at all. But typically what I get is just the misrepresentation of what I'm trying to say there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think you did a really good job too in one of your videos. I'm trying to remember which video it was now too, but people were accusing you of all these fallacies, and then you kind of went through and explained why they didn't understand. It was the video on what atheists still get wrong, I think, or something like that, or
Yeah.
something of that effect.
Yeah, that was a while ago, but yeah, well, it's like what atheists confuse and what atheists still confuse.
Yeah.
And one of the guys that responded to me, I don't know what his problem is, if he's got some issues, but he just tried to throw in, anytime I quoted someone, he would just say, well, that's an appeal to authority.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're just thinking whatever you can think of and saying it's a fallacy. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
But I have heard atheists tell me, just ignore that guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So
Yeah, and I've seen that too. Like, some people said that on your one of your debates in the comment section. Some of the atheists were saying that they said that you're just appealing to authorities, and yeah, that just shows again people don't understand the fallacy. Do you want to clarify what that fallacy is so that way people understand?
An appeal to authority fallacy would be if I appeal to like someone like Michael Jordan, or if I was trying to explain biblical scholarship and I appealed to Lee Strobel. Now he's written on that, but he's not an expert on the issue. He's got to appeal to experts. Or if you were doing a video and you appealed to me, I mean, that would be an appeal to authority because I'm not actually a scholar. We have to appeal to the actual experts. And I want to clarify, I don't say, well, scholars say it, therefore it's true. That's another fallacy. I say, look, here's my argument. Here are the scholars that make this argument. Here are the reasons for making this argument. And I'm giving you the scholars so you can check my sources. And I'm showing you that this is a scholarly argument. It's not something I just made up off the top of my head. So you can use scholarly sources and experts in conjunction with your evidence or your arguments. And if people just hear, oh, he cited scholars, therefore he's appealing to authority. No, that's not how it works.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Now, let's get into some of your controversial stuff. So you're a little controversial, just not too controversial. You're not like, super like you're a heretic or something. But you have a couple views that disrupt people. What do you think is probably one of your most controversial views that kind of rub some people the wrong way?
Honestly, it's my theistic evolutionist view, because I'm a theistic evolutionist, and I have no qualms about that. I don't have to apologize for that. I think that's the best description of reality. It's a Christian theistic worldview. So I accept the full theory of evolution, that humans evolved from lower animals, so to speak. And I also accept Christian doctrine. So I do believe there was an historical Adam and Eve. I believe they were the first priests over creation. They were elected by God, not materially created. So that's probably my most controversial view, and I'm going through a series of that on my channel.
Yeah, and you've done videos on it in the past too, right? You've done you do a 3-part series or 2-part series on it too. Um,
Kind of. I did a two-part series about a year ago or so. Maybe it was like a year and a half ago,
okay,
where I just kind of explained what the Imago Dei means.
gotcha.
So that was basically it.
Gotcha. Yep. Yep. No, man. What I do appreciate about you is that you you have your views, what you think is true, and you just hold to them, and you're willing to discuss them and stuff. And I think what kind of sucks is that a lot of times we get into these little groups where we attach so much emotion to some sort of view or something like that, where people we try to shame people for even being able to talk about these different views, right? Because I know even when I was first coming to Christianity, I'm struggling with understanding like the Trinity and stuff, and I remember not being able to feel like I could talk to some Christians because they're just like gonna flip out on you. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm just trying to understand it and throw out this view so that way we can understand it. But people just flip out. So I think that it's really good. It's a healthy way to discuss things if you're in an environment where you can discuss things. And so it does suck that like a lot of times we have people that are just quick to just like deem other people as heretics for just different views, and for me, I think I value like honesty above, everything else. So like if you're honest and you're being straightforward about your views, then I think that that's the right thing to be able to discuss, so
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
cool. We got a super chat from JMD I just saw come in. JMD, what
Oh,
up, man? What are you doing?
here he goes.
He says, how was CIA, bro? CIA was dope. Frank Turk CIA was good to see a lot of people, see a lot of, got to meet a lot of subscribers and stuff there too, which was dope. So it was fun. And then he says, does IP admit that he lost from G-Man? See, oh yeah, I heard you got spanked by G-Man in a debate, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah, yeah, that created the controversy I want because I wanted to get those arguments out. So, and
Yeah.
we have any good replies to my points, and I thought it went really well.
Gotcha, man. Yeah, it's not what the word on the street is, son. Said you got smoked. No, I was just kidding. All right. Let's see. So yeah. So what do you? Let's see. I'm gonna try to just browse through some kind of questions. Here's a question that a lot of people kind of were curious to hear our views on too. Is what do you believe is the role that doubt plays in the Christian worldview?
I think doubt needs to be used in a Christian worldview because doubt is a good tool. It should not be the end goal, like sometimes you get from street epistemologists, but it needs to be a good tool to check ourselves that we're on the right track, that we are holding to the right beliefs. So you have doubt. Everyone watching has doubt. Every atheist has doubt. Don't tell me you don't have doubt or that you never question yourself. If you don't go back and question yourself and doubt yourself, you're not being honest and you're not trying to be as unbiased as you possibly can be. So I use doubt. I have sat sometimes and really have questioned one of these things. And, you know, you got to use that kind of stuff to help sort of really get, come up with objections to your view, see if it's real, see if it's holds to truth. I mean, just going through some of these stuff, I've rejected entire beliefs I've had in the past because I realized that my doubts were big enough to offer objections to those specific beliefs. So, I think Christians need to admit they have doubt, experience it, use it, and not be afraid of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And there really is a sunny side to doubt because I'm like growing up and all too. Like I've always been a real big doubter. You know what I mean? But like when you have these doubts, they spark you into serious research and study. And I've changed my views on a lot of things too, growing up and all too. And I think that that's important. You know what I mean? Like I said, honesty, being honest with yourself is huge. So I think it's good, and I think it's biblical too to use those doubts. I remember Paul says somewhere where he says, be convinced in your own minds, and so I think that these doubts can spark that a lot of the time, so I think that's good. We got another super chat from Frank Christian. Frank Christian, what's up? He says, inspiring philosophy, I'm a big fan, but how surprised will you be when you get to heaven and God tells you that we did not evolve?
I would be very surprised because from what I have read on Talk Origins and from different peer-reviewed studies and textbooks, that there's a lot of evidence there. So I would have a lot of questions like, okay, well, what about this? Okay, then why are these there? Okay, then where did we get this wrong? Because based on the science I've read, it would be very, very hard to overturn that.
Gotcha. All right, and you know, you got another real interesting view too, and it's another view that a lot of people probably it's probably just it's so counterintuitive that people probably just think you're crazy until they hear your view, and that's your idealist. You're an idealist, right?
Yeah, I call myself a dual aspect idealist.
Dual aspect idealist. Okay, yeah. Just kind of in a nutshell, what is that view?
So think of materialism. They say everything is material. Think of substance dualism. They say there is two substances, material and mind. Idealists say it's just all mind. So we say that basically all the only thing that exists is mind, and matter is an emergent phenomenon or emergent information construct that is dependent upon mind.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, and this correlates well with quantum mechanics too, right?
Very much so. Yeah, that seems to be where the evidence is pointing, especially in if you look at like the violation of Bell's inequality, the violation of Leggett's inequality, the confirmation of the Cauchy-Spector theorem. I mean, the data just has been pouring in supporting this view. And
And
so I just go right to the physicists like Anton Zellinger or um, Stephen, or yeah, name is escaping me. He wrote Modern Physics and Ancient Faith. But yeah, I just go right to the physicists who were saying this kind of stuff.
yeah, you know, so I think it also comports well with theology too, right? It solves some sort of theological riddles, and we talked about that before on a previous live stream. But it does, but it's so strangely weird. I remember when I first came across the concept. I watched your series on all these different things, and then I was like sitting in my room, like, are we really in the Matrix? You know what I mean? Like trying to look
Yeah.
around at everything and be like, is this all like mental? But prior to seeing that, I did study a lot on near death experiences, and so it kind of gave me a little bit of understanding even from that perspective, you know. But so with this view, like here's where I get. So whenever I'm looking into this, I always get to a certain point where we hit these quantum mechanics and we have these different theories, and I just don't know how much of the quantum mechanics, how many different views you can have of it, and what how many of them support the idealistic views, or the thing that space time is an emergent property from something more fundamental. You know, would you be able to give me kind of an idea? I don't know if I worded that question clearly, but you kind of get what I'm getting at. Like for me, I'm just like I don't
Yeah.
know what to infer from the quantum mechanics and how controversial those quantum mechanics are that support this view.
Well, the main view is the Copenhagen interpretation, and that's just like a pragmatic interpretation. What some people like Henry Stapp, who's a physicist, says, okay, just take the philosophical implications of the Copenhagen interpretation, and he calls this the orthodox interpretation. So consciousness really is causing collapse. He builds on John von Neumann, Wigner, and he just calls this the orthodox interpretation. So it's just a standard interpretation plus its philosophical implications. What a lot of other physicists have done is they don't like this idea, so they posit other interpretations to sort of get around this. And what they're trying to get around is, for the most part, is wave function collapse. So sometimes you'll see like quantum Bayism. That's like an anti-realist position. It would correlate just fine with idealism, but it also correlates with an anti-realist position, which I reject. So that's a whole can of worms in and of itself. But then you'll see something like the many worlds interpretation, which just says there is no wave function collapse. Really, there is the multiple worlds ensemble that is out there, and because there is no wave function collapse, there's just every possibility in the wave function is actually happening. And so there are problems with that as well. Some will posit Bohmian mechanics. So they posit an extra force of nature that it's not so much a wave function. It's actually a real physical wave. And that somehow is guiding particles and making it appear like consciousness is causing collapse. And so there's some problems with those. I've done videos explaining the problems with them. The idea that's really going to get to the idealist interpretation is going to be the orthodox interpretation, but that's going to just go off the standard model as we have it.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah, dude. It's so interesting, man. So even no matter what you guys think about this view, I mean, I really encourage you to go watch his videos on this because it's super intriguing. Like, you know, it sounds insane when you think about all of reality is really just mental properties coming from God's.
Well, just ignore the quantum mechanics for a second and just think about it in a basic philosophical sense. So just going off Descartes, the only thing you know that exists, that you, John, you know that exists, is your consciousness and that you are experiencing something.
Right.
Okay, so building off that, look at like this phone. okay, I can describe this in mental properties. It's black, it's solid, it's slightly heavy, but all of that is just mental phenomenon in of itself. There is no real color in the world. These are wavelengths for hitting the eye, chemical reactions, and the brain is interpreting that as a color on a materialist perspective. The idealist just says, let's just look at the world for what it is. It's a mental phenomenon. We don't have to posit a separate substance beyond mind if we can explain it all in terms of mental properties of objects.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me, because it's possible for physical reality to be an illusion, but it's not possible for the mental reality to be an illusion.
Exactly, and that's what idealists build upon.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. What I think we'd all agree on is that materialism seems so quite obviously false, right? I remember even when I was studying near-death experiences and stuff too, I was just like, materialism's so far from true. Seems like so.
There's a part of me that almost wants consciousness to be created by the brain, because if it does, I think you could still have a Christian understanding of that. Because some Christian philosophers do write from a physicalist perspective, not a materialist, because they obviously believe God exists. But that view could possibly function within Christianity. But it's just so hard to get consciousness from the brain. I tried talking to materialists about this, and I don't know how they could even see this as a possibility.
Yeah. I'm with you. Cool, man. Another super chat from Nicholas Perkins. It says, thanks for your super chat. It says, the Trinity is a white hole, a tachyon, and a tachyonic wave. God and science are one. Stop being a 2-3. Stop being a 1-3 idealist. Do you understand that?
Cool story, bro.
Cool story. I didn't even follow it. Maybe I'm just too tired.
Yeah.
But hey, I appreciate the super chat. All right, now we got another super chat. Oh, where did it go? There it is. We got another super chat from, I always see you and I have no idea how to pronounce your name, but I appreciate your comments. From ALKYL, Dime Trill, Benzil. Yeah, whatever.
Right. Oh.
But hey, I know who you are, so it's good to see you. It says, IP, you have at least one atheist fan who dislikes Aaron Raw. I love your channel. They're talking about the discount. The dislike.
I have heard from at least a good 12, maybe to 20, somewhere in there, of atheists after my debate with Aaron Raw, who said, you won. We can't stand him. He doesn't represent us. Yeah. Please debate better atheists. And I'm like, look, I get you. I did it for his audience, but I totally get it. He does not represent all of atheists. And there's a lot of atheists who have come to me saying, he doesn't represent us. We disagree with him on this.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just on Think Club the other day, and he was on my side on this topic too.
Yeah, I actually get a good amount of comments too on even the video I did on Aaron Raw and Faith a while back, a few months ago, with people. I get comments all the time from atheists saying that they disagree with them. And I think that's why he keeps doing responses to it, because it's probably, people are probably coming at him with it. But I mean, why was
they are? If you go on Twitter, atheists have been calling him. I saw one atheist called herself godless. She was calling him a clown directly over this whole issue. That should say something when your own side isn't ready to do that. I mean, if my own side was doing that with me, I might step back, as I have in the past, like on the Genesis stuff, and had to reevaluate, contact more scholars, ask some questions, because I just really want to make sure I'm not misrepresenting or on the wrong side here. So I guess that goes back to the whole doubt thing. If people on my own side are saying, you should doubt this, okay, my own tribe is now telling me, my own tribe that's rooting for me is telling me I should check something. I'm going to check it.
Yeah, and on top of it, it's like, it's one thing to just like disagree with somebody, you know what I mean? But like to completely like, and this is the whole thing too. When I watched his, I listened to his dialogue with Eric Hernandez when I was on the airplane headed up to New York a little bit ago, and it was just like a disaster. I just hated that discussion. It was so bad, right? But
it's really bad when your opponent is saying, look, that's not what I believe, that's not why I believe it, and then he just goes on about, no, this is why, and I'm going to tell you what other people believe. And he's like, well, you're talking to me, and he's like, I don't care what you believe. It's like, what is I could barely make it through that, because the misrepresentation was so bad. That's
what the worst part about it is to me. And the thing is too, I'm not convinced that Aaron Rawl is being intentionally dishonest. I just don't understand what he's saying. Like, it's so weird, because I'm like, okay, let me understand his perspective. Is he saying this? And then I tried thinking about it from that perspective, and then he says something else, and then he's just making this big... so anyways, Aaron, I'm sorry, I say Aaron. But Aaron, if you're watching this, I would love to hear you just explain it more clearly. And I know you're going to say that I'm just, you call names and stuff like that, but I'm being genuine when I say this. I feel like you're being misrepresented just because you seem like you really feel strong about this view, but like it just doesn't make sense to me. It just seems from our perspective that you're just like plugging your ears and saying like, no, this is what you believe, and then we're like, no, that's not what we believe, and then
Right.
it's just really strange, so
Well, no, no, not only that. I mean, he did a video today, and he brought up some studies. Well, I downloaded the studies and read them. Does he want me to go through these studies and show where the problems are or
yeah,
why they're not supporting his conclusion? Both of the studies he mentioned in the front don't even say the word intrinsic.
yeah,
They're not talking about intrinsic religiosity.
yeah,
And when you get into what they're actually talking about, it's not really helping his conclusion. This one on mixed blessing, I made a bunch of highlights in.
yeah.
So it's like this is a study that I would use. Like I don't know why he would cite this.
Yeah, that's the thing too, where it kind of sucks when these kind of, this online thing, just because it's really easy to miss each other sometimes. Because I feel like, and I just don't know. It's just like I think there's just a miscommunication going on. That's what it just seems like. But it's very hard for me to understand how he keeps coming to these, like, it seems like question begging conclusions with every sentence he says almost. No matter what he's talking about, it seems so question begging. But
Yeah,
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 he just
and
throws out stuff like,
yeah, even when he had Dr. Josh on that video he posted today, Dr. Josh never once confirmed what he said in his
yeah,
prior video, where he says it takes both a prefix and a suffix to turn trust into faith. Faith is a complete trust that is not based on evidence. And I left watching that video, scratching my head, going, when did Dr. Josh gave examples that I would use to say that look, faith is not denying evidence or reason. Dr. Josh's own example of a kid standing on a ledge and his father going, "Jump, I'll catch you," is obviously a belief based on evidence. He knows his father. He knows his father can catch him. He sees his father. I was really confused, wondering where Dr. Josh helped Aaron in that video.
yeah.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, I was listening to it at work when because you text me because you said some people might ask about it, so I might as well
Yeah.
be familiar. So I was listening while I was at work, so I wasn't fully there listening, but I listened to it and I thought the same thing at the end. I said, wait, like, yeah, it didn't seem like Josh was helping his case, but Aaron kept saying stuff like that he was like fishing for something. It seemed like, and then Dr. Josh would kind of like, well, he'd be kind of like passive about it, kind of like trying to, kind of keep it off. But anyways,
I
that's just
have a
my
lot of
perspective. That's just how it seemed to me.
and I have a lot of respect for Dr. Bowen. Even though I don't agree with him on some things, I think he's a pretty good, upstanding scholar.
Yeah, he's a scholar. He's a scholar, right? And before that, they were talking about
Yeah.
Dan Barker. Who's, yeah, I don't know. I don't really
Yeah,
want to
I
pill up
never
that kind
asked
of
for a
list.
theologian. I don't know
Yeah.
why Aaron went and got a theologian. I never asked for a theologian. He obviously is still not listening.
Ross said that he was Koine Greek scholar. That's what he said in that video too, which was, yeah. Anyways, Dan
Dan
Barker.
Barker denied it in there though. Like he's
Yeah,
not a Koine Greek scholar. He
yeah,
says he may have translated some stuff, but
yeah,
even Dan Barker stopped one step short of saying that pistis means
yeah,
a complete trust that is not based on
yeah,
evidence. To quote Aaron directly,
yeah,
I didn't get that anywhere. And again, he even admitted he's not a Greek scholar.
yeah,
He was a theologian.
yeah, yeah. All right, let's keep it moving. So, Frank Christian, another super chat. Appreciate you. All right, it says, have either of you guys written a book yet, or do you intend to write one in the future? If you haven't, I think my Zoom says it's messing up.
The meeting has been upgraded, and the host now includes unlimited minutes. I don't know.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Hopefully, we're still
Yeah,
live.
you're fine.
Okay, cool. So,
Yeah, I think we're fine.
yeah. So, have either of you guys written a book yet, or do you intend to write one in the future? If you haven't, I haven't, but I've been working on some stuff for the last like 3 years. That one day I will publish. Me and another guy are working on understanding communication when it comes to culture, the church, and apologetics, and where everybody's missing each other, where people push back, the different languages they're speaking, the different epistemologies they're using, and that sort of thing. So we built two models that we use for it too. So eventually one day I probably will end up publishing something like that, because I think that it's super helpful. So that's it for me. What about you, Mike?
So my goal is if I can get enough donation support to go full time, and I think I'm just $300 a month under budget to start full time. So I'm
Okay,
almost there. I could almost go full time at this point.
that's
If I
awesome.
get there, I'm going to go get my master's degree in philosophy of science, possibly, and then I'm going to write a book, like on some of the arguments for God's existence I've been giving, like arguing from emergent space time, these types of things. So that's
Yep.
my goal,
Yep.
because I'd like to get the degree behind me before I start writing. And more people see my videos than I think I would write a book. So the videos I think are actually helping more people as it is. And I think the book can be secondary, but yeah, eventually I do want to write a book, but I'd like to get a degree first.
Dope, 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 dope. All right, cool. Now another super chat from David Julian. Thank you, appreciate the super chat. Of course, says I want to thank both of you for the content you do. Now, something I struggle with as a relatively new Christian is the Sabbath. What scripture would you two point me to?
Okay, so I actually get in conversations all the time with Hebrew roots movement people, or messianics is what they call themselves. These are people who think you shall still have to keep Old Testament Mosaic law. And I go to my debate with Arn Raw. I did this in 4 easy steps. Go to Matthew 5, a passage they always like to bring up, and I don't even understand how they interpret that. It bothers me sometimes. But Matthew 5, Jesus says, "Do not think I've come to abolish law; I've come to fulfill it." And not one jot tittle shall pass away until all is fulfilled. Okay, the second "until" clause in there dominates it in Greek. So Jesus says it will pass away when it's fulfilled. Jump to John 19:20-30, when Jesus bowed his head to fulfill the scriptures. He said, "It is finished." Okay, law fulfilled. Go to Hebrews 8. In speaking of a new covenant, he has made the first obsolete. So we have the new covenant now because Jesus didn't abolish the first. He fulfilled it, gave it, showed it his true purpose, upheld it, signed it. It's done. It's now obsolete, done away with, passing away, these types of things. So we have the new covenant. We don't have to keep the Sabbath anymore. Just think of it like this. If you have a rent agreement for an apartment and you move out of that apartment and you go to a new one, you're going to have a new rent agreement. There might be overlap on some of those laws or rules between the rent agreements, but you don't follow the rules of your old rent agreement. You follow the rules of your new rent agreement in your new apartment. We're in the new covenant. We follow the new rules. Sabbath is not stipulated. What's stipulated is love thy neighbor as thyself, believe in Christ, love God.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Very good. Now we have another super chat from Ta Dyken. What's up? Thanks for the super chat. It says, IP, do you know of any YEC that at least try to interact with the functional reading of Genesis 1 and 2? And by the functional reading, he's speaking of, what's his name?
Did try to interact? Yeah, John Walton.
Yeah, Walton's view.
Did try to interact with it. I'm not sure. I know I got a response on from Standing for Truth on my one video, which is hilarious. I encourage everyone to go watch it just to see how funny it is. Seriously, that's how bad I thought the response was. I was telling people to go watch it. But yeah, maybe that's what first comes to mind because that's the most recent I can remember. I know Answers in Genesis has written stuff about Walton. There's a blog called Cerebral Faith, which has answered a lot of the objections against Walton. And so that's a good place to go to deal with those objections. But yeah, young Earth creationists are aware and they try to respond accordingly.
Cerebral
I don't
Faith,
think
that's Evan Minton, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
He's done a lot of blogs lately defending Walton's view.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, and I know I haven't read, but I think the McGrews did a response to Walton too, right? Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, I didn't really. I do remember reading it a while ago. Not really convinced by it.
Okay.
A lot of it, I'd have to go back and check to remind myself what their objections were. I don't want to misrepresent them.
Cool, cool. Absolutely. Nate 2D. What up, Nate? Nate Dogg in the house. He says, how many nuns would a nunchuck chuck if a nunchuck could chuck nuns? Dude, that's a great question, bro. It's actually making me deep, or making me think. Yeah, so now another kind of question that I kind of want to ask you is, how do you feel? I mean, doing YouTube is not necessarily easy. You got to have some pretty thick skin to do YouTube. You know what I mean? And people are just mean to you all day, all the time, right? Like, just,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
go ahead.
I was thinking. I mean, even like believers and stuff like that too. I mean, it just kind of comes with the territory. How do you kind of feel about it, or how do you cope with it? Or do you care a lot, or do you not care about much, or how do you kind of feel?
I mean, I almost deleted my channel in the first year a couple times.
Yeah, yeah,
I did. I came really close a couple times even because it was a lot. And
yeah.
I was really insecure when I started. As I said, I hid. I think the more I've done it, the more I've debated with them, the more confident I get, because I see the atheist objections to the arguments I presented, and I'm just like, really, that's it? I was expecting more.
Yeah.
And so this is why I started reading more, because I'm like, okay, let me read the professional atheists. I'll read J.L. Mackie. I'll read Nicholas Everett. I'll read Nagel. Let me see if there are any good objections out there, because I'm not getting it online. And when I started to realize that, I got far more confident, and I was just like, you know what? At the end of the day, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I it's like, if they're going to attack me, they're going to attack me.
Yeah.
My confidence, it doesn't need to be based on what other people think in me. And I think listening to some of Tim Keller's sermons also really helped me get my focus right on what really matters.
Yeah.
So it was a process, but I got there.
No, absolutely, man, and I love Keller too, by the way. But no, I think like there's been times, me too, man. Like not as much from the hate and stuff like that. You kind of get sometimes it used to get to me a little bit when I first started, but now honestly, I just don't really care. You know what I mean? It's whatever. It's like I said too. Like I think about like we have all of eternity here, and like you think I care that much about what some people on YouTube say when they call me names and stuff and don't understand me usually? Like I don't really care.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I've gotten to the point now where if they're going to be rude and start insulting me, I'll just block them. I'm not going to waste my time. If they're going to, post objections, sometimes I respond, sometimes I don't care anymore, because I've dealt with them in the past.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I usually don't. I don't block people unless they really annoy me. That's my only rule. You annoy me where you're just like being obnoxious, then I'll block you. But for the most part, I don't block too many people. So if you're blocked, you're probably super annoying. Yeah. So all right. Another super chat from Shredded. Oh, actually, hold on. Before we get to that, I saw my buddy Aiden was posting. Aiden, what's up, man? I hope you're still watching. Sorry, because I know you have questions. I actually met Aiden last week down in New York, and he likes your stuff a lot too. And he was asking about a lot of stuff with B time, and we don't want to spend too much time on B time there because I know a lot of my subs probably aren't familiar with it. But basically, B time is a view of time where all of time is kind of like a block. You've probably explained it a little better, but basically it's like a block of time, and we're just so if you picture all of time being a ruler, people in 1950 or something would have been on like the 5.5 point, and then like today we're on the 6 inch. You know what I mean? So all of time exists at once, but we're just going through different portions of it. But that's technically not even the right language. But what are your kind of thoughts on B time? And then is that consistent with your idealistic view, or is it comported, or is it kind of irrelevant?
No, I hold the B theory of time. I think A theory of time would be is a little bit harder. It would be I mean, it could still be consistent with idealism. Let me take that back. I think the scientific evidence points to B theory of time, and I don't really have any qualms with it.
Gotcha. What about like I remember a common objection to B time theory is that the scientists are having too much of a scientific realism when it comes to it. So like it works well for the math to say that time is like a space-time block. It works well with the math, but when you get outside of, is that taking too much of a realistic view of the science? What do you think about that?
I don't understand the objection. I would
Yeah.
suggest we should take a realistic view of science. I think it could be counterintuitive, and it's possible. One thing you also have to take into factor, which people don't really talk about, is there's an equation called the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, which calculates the wave function of the universe. And when you calculate the wave function of the universe, the time factor drops out. And there was some experimental verification in 2013 to support the Wheeler-DeWitt equation and the time factor dropping out. I mentioned it in my video, The Emergent Universe. So it does seem that the time is an emergent construct, and it's not fundamental to reality. That would support a B theory of time, basically.
Gotcha. And what I meant by the realism is if like because I remember gosh, and I can't remember who, but I know William Lane Craig uses this objection too, where he says that basically like the math works as if we did have a space-time block, but just because the math works doesn't mean that it's an actual representation of reality, in other words. But yeah, so all right. So, anyways, now we're super chat from Shredded. What up, Shredded? Thanks for your super chat. Appreciate you. So, Shredded says, "What is your disagreement with Dr. Kent Hovind?" Oh, good lordy, could go on that forever. Well, you guys actually did a recent debate, though, right?
Yeah, back in January. Yeah, he's a King James onlyist, and that's in Looneyville. If you're a King James onlyist, and I have no qualm saying that. Young Earth creationism is dangerous and wrong and It just goes against so much scientific evidence. I mean, where do I begin? It's just like
Well, so
I
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Okay, no, I was just gonna say. So, from an outside perspective, I can see how both sides can equally see the other as doing horrible disservice to Christianity, right? Like that's what's so crazy about it. So, like the younger creationists see it as like, oh, you're just saying that we can interpret the Bible however we want, and then a lot of like, I think the older generations tend to think that evolution's a bigger deal to the younger generations than it is, but they think that all of the problems on in universities and everything comes from the way that people view man, which they think is from evolution and stuff like that. So they think that that's a huge problem, right? And they think that you're compromising the authority and the word of God by trying to make it fit your own narrative. So that's on that side. Then on the other side, they're like, if this isn't the way that the authors intended for it to be read, and for you trying to read in a literalistic interpretation that goes against reality and all of the science, that sounds very dangerous, because now you're getting people that say, I have to reject Christianity because it clearly doesn't correspond with reality from what we see in from the stars. You look at the stars and you're like, oh, I've been fooled. So that's where I think I can understand the pushback from both sides. So that's why I think if we can start there, then we can say, well, what's true. So anyways, that's my thoughts. But
And if anyone wants to say the theory of evolution is dangerous or causing problems, I'm going to say the same thing I said to Aaron Ra. Show me a study. Because some people have said the Columbine shooters, the theory of evolution encouraged them to go out and shoot. Ken Hovind has argued that. All right, show me a study. I would expect the same thing I would demand from Aaron Ra when he says Christianity is dangerous. Show me a study. Show me a meta-analysis. And, I know his evidence. It doesn't hold up, the random studies he cited. And I know there's no evidence that the theory of evolution causes bad behavior either. So, I go both ways on that. I will argue against both sides using the same arguments.
So then, I would anticipate a question then for you would be, how is your kind of epistemology structured? So some people would say, and this is where I think everybody probably should have wrestled with at some point in their lives, where they say, so do I accept what I believe is this, interpretation of, or they just say a plain reading of Genesis, like Kent Hovind arguments, which I think is a terrible argument, by the way. Kent Hovind arguments, if you are YC, some of the Kent Hovind arguments are just really, really bad. But anyways, they say that, they're saying this is a plain reading. So I could see people, in other words, accusing you of taking science above the Bible, like science is your real authority. What would you kind of say to something like that?
I would remind people that early church fathers argued extensively that the 67th book is nature. Okay, nature helps guide how we should understand Scripture. This was a common belief in the early church. I remember St. Basil talking about this in some of his writings. So I don't think I have to choose one or the other. I got to look and see. I think they are constantly defining and informing on both. So, I mean, for example, atheists, like, for example, the philosopher Michael Ruse, would say Christianity gets it spot on when it talks about original sin, perfectly explaining the psychology of humanity. And so, some of these atheist philosophers and psychologists will note that the biblical understanding of original sin and the nature of humanity gets that right. And so I would say these can help explain and build on each other. If science were to contradict something, then I would not say Scripture. I don't have to say Scripture is wrong unless it's very explicitly clear. Let me preface that, like we find the body of Jesus. Now I got to my beliefs, but sometimes it can help you better understand the correct interpretation of certain passages and certain things. I don't see why that's a problem. That should be a thing we should do. That was encouraged by the early church.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, yeah, I had another follow-up, but we'll actually keep moving because we got some more super chats in. So let's go to Breakfast Gun. What's up? Thanks for the super chat. Appreciate you. It says, if theistic evolution were true, we're all evolved. Oh, I think they're saying we're all evolved man sinless before the original sin. Did God have a relationship then like he did with Adam and Eve?
Yeah, he would have. I mean, he walked with them in the garden, so he would have had a relationship with them. And yeah, we did. Here's my thing about the whole original sin thing. Okay, so sin is transgressing God's law. There can be no sin until God gives the law. So sin results after God makes a covenant with Adam and Eve and tells them the law, and now they have to keep the law of God. There can be no sin before God gives the law. So I mean, think of a good example. A lot of young earth creationists think Cain married his sister, but that's outlawed in the Mosaic law. Well, God didn't give that law yet. It was okay for Cain because that law was not exactly. That's my point. You can't have sin unless God gives specific laws that says you can't do X, Y, and Z. So there was no sin yet because God did not give the law to humans. And when he gave the law to humans and they broke it, then there was sin. So that's sin entered the world that way. It didn't have to be perfect prior to that.
Interesting. All right, cool. And David Julian, another super chat. Appreciate you. Says, thanks. So what do you make of the explosion of culture and society in the ancient Near East and its overlap with things recorded in Genesis?
Oh, I think that's so. I just did a presentation for Apologetics Academy where I called the reliability of Genesis 1 to 11. And I talk about a lot of those in there. I think these are giving us good evidence that Genesis 1 to 11 is actually much older. It represents a far much older tradition, even if it was finally compiled in the Babylonian exile. So it does represent an older tradition, and I do look for correlations on purpose because I think there's a lot of good evidence there to indicate that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Cool, cool. What would you say? This is something I'm kind of curious about. So, and so for one, for me personally, I haven't spent like a ridiculous amount of time looking into the theory of evolution and not. I read Jerry Coyne's book, Why Evolution is True. I read Richard Dawkins' The Greatest Show on Earth, and prior to that, I read some Kent Hovind stuff, and I mean, I used to watch his debates back in the day and stuff, but I haven't dedicated a terrible amount of time to it. But what would you say would personally be the most compelling evidence for theistic evolution? If you had to pick.
Probably in genetics, like fossil genes, for example, as well as human chromosome number 2 is interesting with the telomeres in the middle there. I mean, that's quite rare. It does show like there is a fusion from an earlier one that you see along chimpanzee lines. One of the most compelling evidence that convinced me originally was this idea that a lot of the fossils are aligning with the rock layers that we would expect. So we don't see modern day Homo sapiens in rock layers with Australopithecus or dinosaurs or archosaurs or trilobites. And so now, and we date these rock layers through radiometric dating, like potassium argon dating, uranium 235 dating. And so when we date those rock layers, it's quite effective. We have different, as I said, we have different types of dating methods to date these rock layers, and they line up and giving us accurate dating methods. And then the fossils in those rock layers correlate with like this progression towards humanity. You see Australopithecus older than Homo habilis, and you see Homo habilis older than Homo erectus. Homo erectus older than Homo sapiens. It's just an odd coincidence that they all line up perfectly. If evolution was false, we should find in the same rock layer Australopithecus and Homo sapiens, or Homo sapiens and dinosaurs. And there are no studies which show that. I know young Earth creationists like to say there are, but really there are no studies that actually show that.
Interesting. That's what's interesting is those were all of the same things that I found convincing when I read the work too. But I've heard people talk about like with the pseudogenes and stuff like this. Basically, you have these like if you think about like a whale has these OR genes, which are oscillatory receptors, which are used for detecting like violet chemicals outside of water. But they have these genes for them, but these are shut off, right? So you're thinking like if God specially created the whale in this way, then why would he create them with these genes that they're not going to use anyway? Because these genes are dormant, And so I found that, and also too with the layers, I was just thinking like, it'd be easier to falsify if you can just find, a complex creature in the lower levels of strata too, then you could falsify it too. But I mean, I know that there's responses to it, and I haven't got into them. So so I don't know how strong those arguments are, and it's not high on my priority list to figure out with evolution because I don't think it's a big stumbling block for younger Christians anyway. And I'm a lot more focused with kind of the younger kind of generations too. So that's my personal take. So I thought it's interesting that we had similar things that we found compelling, or are things that I did years ago too when I just looked into it. It's something that you did too. So,
right.
All right. So let's see. We got a super chat. Let me just make sure I didn't miss another one. Okay, we did. Okay, cool. All right. So now this super chat is from Slavic Striz, Striz. James Stewart has good evidence against evolution using science. Good stuff, and shows how impossible it is. Have you looked at them? I sure haven't. Have you?
No, I mean I'll check them out when I have the time.
Cool.
But yeah, I'll check it out. I don't want to dismiss someone just because I may not like the view. But yeah, if he's got some good arguments, I'd like to hear.
Cool. You know what I was thinking actually? I thought about this a while back. Would you say that idealism is super compatible with younger creation? Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, mm, I guess you could
Ish.
possibly. Yeah, I mean, you could totally make a connection there. But I don't. Since I'm a realist when it comes to
Right. Yeah.
science, I don't really. But I mean, again, if you're an anti-realist in philosophy of science, you could probably make some interesting connections there.
Interesting. Got it. That makes sense. Cool. All right. Another super chat from Bobby. Bobby, what's up, Bobby? Bobby says, have either of you read John Walton's Lost World series on Genesis 1, Adam and Eve? I
Have
know you
I?
haven't, Mike. I know you haven't.
Yeah, I don't have any books.
Yeah. Just,
I've not went and got John Walton's sources and read those.
yeah. John Walton's really influential in your views, right?
Yeah, I like. He's definitely quite influential in the way I look at things. And I recently was reading Gene Patero. I read 2 of his books recently because Walton brings him up. And actually, Dr. Josh Bowen in one of his hangouts with Michael Brown recommended that book for me. So I got that, and I got another one. And they were phenomenal. I loved them. So yeah, I have read a lot of them.
No, that's awesome. And two, John Walton, is controversial, but I still advise everybody to kind of check him out. There's an awesome, so I have a Bible that's a historical background Bible, and John Walton does the Old Testament, and Craig Keener does the New Testament, and I refer to it all the time. It's my main Bible that I read too. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so you guys, we'll just take a few more questions. So you guys make sure you throw your questions in. Aiden, what's up, man? It just says character limit, space time from consciousness in particular.
One question I did see in the chat was someone asked me about the sons of God in Genesis 6, and I'll just say real quick, I'll have a video on that in December.
Cool, awesome. Aiden wants to know about your views from space time from consciousness in particular. Oh, I think I think Aiden's asking about how solid is the evidence for space time from consciousness in particular.
That's an interesting way to word it. I would say there's a lot of good evidence for emergent space-time, and that what it emerges from is mind-like. So if you check out my video, The Emergent Universe, I make the connections that, from what you see in emergent space-time and the holographic principle to some of the work that Diedrich Ertz does with quantum cognition. And then I note some other interesting correlations as well. So check out that video for more.
Yeah, and guys, I really do highly recommend you check out his videos on all of the idealism and with the space time and also the consciousness too. You have a series on consciousness, if I remember right. It's like 5 videos.
Yeah, I need to redo it because when I did that series, I was in the middle of a move across the country, so people have complained the music is too loud or I'm rushing when I'm talking. So I'm going to redo that series. I'm going to add a whole bunch of extra evidence.
Awesome.
From some books I've read.
Awesome. I thought it was good too, so I liked it a lot. All right, another super chat from Apollo D Jetix. What's up? It says off topic, but hey, IP, do you consider yourself a classical theist or a theistic personalist?
Probably more classical theist.
Classical theist it is. Got another super chat from Shredded. Thanks for another super chat. It says, IP, have you spoke with Stephen Meyer about Darwin's doubt?
No, he probably doesn't know I exist. we don't just talk to people. I was at the bar and Stephen Meyer was there. We just struck up a conversation. No, I don't. I have not. I could email him, but when I get more back into that subject, I can possibly pick up that book and try to look at it more. I do remember not being too much convinced by some of his arguments and what I was seeing online, but I mean, I'd have to actually get back into that. Right now, I'm knee deep in Old Testament studies.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. I was just thinking about the idea. So Stephen Meyer, by the way, is he a theistic evolutionist?
No, he's an ID.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. He's just straight ID then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. All right. All right. What other questions do we got? Yeah, you guys sending your other questions now. We got to get off here in a few. I feel bad. I had you on forever too, Michael. Sorry, man. It's been a long night, right?
I have been down that road before. It doesn't bother me.
Gotcha. Cool. Send your last questions, guys, and then we'll kind of get wrapped up. Let me see what other kind of questions I didn't cover. If there's anything else. Yeah, I did want to ask too, because it sucks. You know what kind of sucks is that I noticed that it's so easy for everybody to misunderstand each other online. You know what I mean? Do you get really frustrated when people like, you know, a lot of atheists and stuff respond to your video and misunderstand your point, because it happens all the time. I mean, I even see it on your videos all the time. You know, like how frustrating is that to you? Or like, what do you
I
think?
mean, it can be frustrating. I think I've just kind of become numb to it at this point. Like I almost expect it half the time, unfortunately. And you know, it might be my fault. Maybe I'm not as articulate as I think I am. Maybe I missed. Maybe I should have explained more. I mean, because sometimes I watch my videos and go, I should have explained a little bit more here. Maybe add a little, maybe reworded that part because you know, I'm not perfect either. Maybe I'm not explaining things properly. So I mean, that's why I have my blog where I can respond to these people and clarify if they have questions. And I try to make myself available. So if people have questions, they can email me and ask for clarification in videos, or they can send me a message on Facebook, ask for clarifications, and I'll happily address that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, and you know, like that's the thing too is like I try to be as clear as I can, and I'm still learning because I'll get some pushback from people misunderstanding me at a certain point, and then I start keeping that in mind when I do my next video, and I try to get more and more clear to kind of cut down on some of that misunderstanding. But the worst part to me is when people watch other people's response videos to my video and act as if, and when those people misunderstand me, then all of their subscribers come to my channel misunderstanding me in the same way. You know, that's always
Oh
annoying. Because they're not even
yeah, it
watching my
happened.
video. They're just repeating what other people say. That drives me nuts.
Yeah, that happened a lot with my video on laws of logic. Everyone kept accusing me of arguing for classical logic. And I was like, there is no, I don't hold to classical logic. Where are you getting this from? Well, one guy wrote a blog, one guy did a video, and that's what they said. And now everyone thinks that. And I'm
Right.
like, they come to my channel. I'm like, that's not what I believe.
Right. Yeah.
I get to tell you what I believe. You don't
Yeah.
get to tell me what I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. I know how that goes. Question from True Gamer 69. What's up, man? He says, True Gamer, by the way, I know who you are, so I appreciate you. He says, what are IP's views on gay marriage and his biblical support for it? If he's cool with saying. Yeah, they're trying to get you
Yeah,
on
I'm
saying
cool.
the controversial.
Oh yeah, I don't care. So politically, I don't really care because I separate my politics from ethics. So like I think adultery is wrong, but I don't think it should be outlawed. So I'm fine with gay marriage in a political sense. When it comes to the biblical text, this is a far more complicated issue than I think the left and the right will acknowledge, because there was no such thing as gay marriage in the ancient world. There was gay relationships, but marriage was about having children. So Augustus Caesar would fine widows if they were not remarried in 2 years. And the Christian churches actually know from some records is that they were paying the widows fines just so they didn't have to remarry, which was actually a really cool thing back then. So that's what marriage was. Ask, if you would go back and ask, you know, an ancient person, what do you think about gay marriage? They'd be like, "That's, you mean gay sex?" Because they didn't understand that just didn't go in their brain because you married to have children. I think it biblically, it's obviously a covenantal sin. So I would probably need to do a video elaborating on what I mean by that. I think it more fits in the New Testament as a Christian covenantal sin, and I need to explain more. So eventually I'll do a video explaining what I mean by that.
Yeah, I did a video on it, and I can't remember how deep I got into it, but it was on the kind of covenantal idea of marriage too.
Yeah.
The video I think was called "Bible and Marriage" or something like that. I can't remember what I called it now, but yeah, no, that's awesome. Another super chat from Todd Dykin. I want to say. Sorry, I'm butchering your name. It says, IPD plan to do a video on Creation ex Nihilo. You have a video on that, right? I've seen
I
it.
did a video called I did a video called "A Universe from Nothing, Therefore
That's right.
God Exists," where I used
Yeah.
Lawrence Krauss's own arguments to argue for theism.
Yeah, which is dope, which is awesome. Yep, yep. Um, all right, so yeah, so any I think we're coming to an end on the questions too. There was another question too that I think probably would be cool to clarify, but I don't know how much you can do here in just like a few seconds. But people are asking, how do you reconcile your theistic evolution with the Bible? People are like dying
Oh,
to understand that.
I'm doing a series on it right now.
Yeah.
I have got 3 videos up so far: two on Genesis 1, one on Genesis 2, and about so next month I'll have one on Genesis 3, and then I'll have another one on Genesis 3. So I'm doing a whole series explaining that so people can know. I'm going to go right after Genesis 1 to 11. You're going to know everything about my theistic evolutionist views. But watch the first 3; they're already up.
Dope, dope. Cool, man. So next, let's see. Yeah, so, oh, another super chat just came in. So we'll take this real quick. From the other name that I can't pronounce, AKLDFOBenzol.
It's a chemical compound. I can't remember.
Yeah, I know. That's why I was like,
I feel like that's what it is.
that wasn't my subject. It says, I think it would be helpful for fruitful conversation if we stop saying atheists say blah blah or Christians believe blah blah and judge individuals. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, he's right.
we're gonna have to I mean, you have to kind of not stereotype, but when we're talking in groups, what's the term I'm looking for? I'm getting tired.
I get what I agree with what he's saying. He's absolutely right on that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it if you're doing it in a colloquial sense.
Yeah.
Because you're sort of like when we say, no one, we say something like, so and so won every debate they've ever had. It's like maybe not. Maybe you're just being more like hyperbolic language. So I think if you're doing it colloquial, it's fine. But he's right. We should be attacking individuals and their arguments, not lumping all people in together as one group.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I will say too, I'm happier with the new atheists. I'm not saying the new atheists as in like Dawkins and Hitchens and all them, but some of the younger guys that are coming on YouTube, I think that they have better videos and stuff than a lot of the older atheist guys too. They seem a lot more reasonable in a lot of ways too. So like Cosmic Skeptic and Rationality Rules and genetically modified skeptic, those kind of guys too, which is kind of unfortunate because I watch their channels, because they don't make me want to jump off a cliff like some other channels do. I end up doing more responses to their videos because those are the videos I'm watching, you know what I mean? Because it's not painful, but it sucks because the guys that I should probably be on a lot harder are people that I just don't even want to, watch their stuff because they drive me nuts. But anyways,
I understand.
Yeah, it's nice that we have some more people that are, a little bit more like, they're trying more to be more reasonable and stuff like that instead of just name calling, you know what I mean? And telling us what we believe and demanding that we agree with them or we're liars and that sort of silly stuff. So, but yeah, so Michael, appreciate it. And guys, just so you guys know too, I'm planning on starting to do kind of a regular live streams. I might do every week. I have to go put together my schedule and see how much I can do, but maybe like one a week would be awesome if I could. But if not, then I'll probably end up doing, once or at least once a month, probably maybe 2 a month. And I'll just get kind of different people on here, stuff too. And usually after the live streams, I'm gonna just get hide them, so that way people can't find them anymore. So that way we get more people coming into the live stream that can watch it. And also too, it's it kind of keeps everything nice and tight too, because I don't want to have a million live streams on my video too, because it's not really what my channel's about. So but anyways, just so you guys know, so Michael, really appreciate you coming, bro. Like, and I always enjoy your stuff. You're one of the few YouTubers that I watch like every video you put out, so I appreciate it, man. Yeah, no problem. And anything else you want to say before we go?
No, the next video, I'll just tell everyone, the next video I have up will be the cultural context of the biblical world, high and low context. So I'm going to go over what those terms mean within cultural context. And I'm going to upset everybody. I'm going to upset onlyists, atheists, young earth creationists. Ken Hovind will show up in the video. I can guarantee you that. But yeah, it's going to be cultural context of the biblical world, what high and low context means. Yeah. And I'm going to cover, I'm going to upset everyone. You'll wait and see. So yeah. I'm going to go through a bunch of examples.
Oh, and a good book, I'm not sure if you read it, but a good book that I read on the cultural context too was Misreading the Scriptures Through Modern Eyes, I think, or Western Eyes, I think it's called.
You mean that book I have somewhere in the stack right here?
Oh, really?
Yeah, here it is. Yeah, I already have that book. Jeez, come on.
Awesome. Awesome. That book is awesome too, because it really puts into perspective. And I linked it down too, by the way, guys, in my video that I did on how to read the Bible. I put it down in the description, so you guys can check that book out too. I think it's good to get a perspective of what the ancients were thinking when they wrote stuff too, so we can understand more clearly what they meant too. So, all right, yeah. I appreciate all you guys too. I see all your comments coming in. Appreciate all the compliments and all that too. Appreciate it, guys. It's great to have you guys here. And Michael, again, thanks for coming on, bro, and dealing with me and putting up with this freaking all these problems that we've been dealing with all night, man. And we'll get you back on soon for sure. And actually, me and you might be seeing each other here in a couple weeks, right? Maybe. I don't know if we got confirmation.
Yeah, I'm going to try to Labor Day weekend. Yeah, I should be able to work that out.
Okay. Yeah, and if so, then we'll start plotting and we'll put together something dope for everybody. Cool.
Cool. Yeah, sounds good.
All right, guys. All right, good to see everybody. All right, good night, everyone.